This one is two. Okay. All right. Are we still trying to get people in? Yes. Get over here. No, Lacey. L-A-C-Y. That's right. All right, we are going to start our town hall meeting. And to get us appropriately started, I'm going to first of all call on Elder Winston Pert, who is representing our host church here, John Huss Moravian Church. Elder Pert, would you please come and say a few words?
Here at John Huss, we like to start all gatherings such as this with a prayer. So if you don't mind, we ask you to bow your heads as we ask God's intervention in our discourse this evening. Let us pray. Gracious God, our Heavenly Father, we thank you that truly this is a day that you have made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. The scripture also speaks about how pleasant it is when brethren, meaning brothers and sisters, men and women and children, can come together in unity of purpose. The overwhelming attendance this evening is testimony of how this community feels about the matter at hand. And so it demonstrates unity of purpose. And that is a good thing. For that we give you thanks. And we pray that our deliberations will be good deliberations. We will respect each other's opinion. And that truly your spirit will be in this place. We know that there are many concerns that this community faces. And this evening, as voice is given to those concerned, we pray that they will be done in a spirit of love, a spirit of respect for each other's opinion. So come now, Lord, and dwell with us, even as we have discourse, and we'll be careful to give you thanks. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We like to consider each other as brothers and sisters. That's how we refer to each other in our church. And so this evening, nonetheless, you are brothers and sisters. I'm not sure what your faith is, but whatever faith you embrace, we are brothers and sisters. And so on behalf of our pastor, the Reverend Dr. Michael Johnson, who I understand might be trying to make it here. I know he was in Toronto. Yesterday we had an exchange of pulpit. And so the pastor from Toronto was here, and he went to Toronto. And I know he's trying to work his way back. And I believe he's in New York and might show up. But I am one of the elders of the church. And it is our joy to welcome you here at 153 Ocean Avenue. As a church, we have just celebrated our 48th anniversary. We are not at this location for 48 years. We were at Franklin, and then we're at this location for some 33 years. And the last time I checked, we are like the only institution on this longest block here in Brooklyn. So because of that, we're overwhelmed. We are with much joy that we open our doors. And the mantra we hold here is that our doors, our arms, and our hearts are always wide open to receive you. I am very impressed at this overwhelming turnout, even on a rainy evening. It means that, come on, give yourself a clap. Yeah. It means that you're serious about what you're about.
Serious and me.
Okay. So that's a good thing. You know, I myself am becoming a little concerned because, you know, as I drive up between Church Avenue and Eastern Parkway, I notice almost every gas station is closing. And I see fence around them. And so you have to begin to watch your gauge now as how far you have to travel to get gas. Because everything seems to be changing around us. And so we have a right to be concerned. But I trust that we can have our discourse in an amicable way. And as I mentioned in the prayer, respect each other's opinion. Just to introduce you a little bit to where our facilities is. I don't think you plan to do any cooking. But just in case you're going to be here all night, the kitchen is behind us. But I hope you brought food and all the seasoning and what have you. But the bathroom facilities are straight ahead. The men on the right and the ladies on the left. So should you need those facilities, you're welcome to go straight ahead. The men on the right, the ladies on the left. And I think that all you need to know by way of introduction, we have some very steep steps, and we ask you to negotiate them very carefully. We know that it's raining, and our sexton is constantly mapping up, because as you come in with the umbrellas, the steps get wet. So please be extra careful. We want to make sure nobody gets hurt. But we trust we'll have a good evening together as we have our deliberations. Thank you very much. And again, welcome to John Huss. And before I sit, I cannot do this. I cannot welcome you to John Huss to a town hall meeting without saying, if any of you are here and have no church home, I have no apology in welcoming you to visit with us. Our services are on Sundays at 11 a.m. And Easter is coming up. Next Sunday, we have a very special service, Palm Sunday service. Wonderful service at 11 a.m. And then on Easter morn, we have 3 services. We start at 6 a.m. and then we go from there into the park. We have a tradition where the Moravians go to a cemetery on Easter morn to trumpet the resurrection. But we have no cemetery here, so we go across to the park. And then we come back for a wonderful breakfast prepared by the elders right here. After which we have a 9 o'clock service. And after that 9 o'clock service, we have an 11 o'clock service. So there's no excuse. 3 services, and you're welcome to share with us in this wonderful season in the Christian calendar. Thank you very much, and enjoy the evening here.
Thank you, Elder Pert, and thank you to the John Huss Moravian Church which through the years has been here and has been a host to us for many, many events. Perhaps somewhere down the line when PLG gets to some real full community planning, we'll also be able to come up with a full community center in which we can host events such as this. In the meantime, thank you, John Huss Moravian Church. Greetings, everybody. My name is Celeste Lacey Davis, and I wanted to start off by saying howdy, neighbors. And I want to say the reason why I thought about saying howdy, neighbors, is because when me and my family moved to Ocean Avenue 25 years ago, they call this the Wild Wild West. You know? But fast forward some 25 years later, it's looking like, as the New York Times has said, PLG is now on the map. And because of that, there is a whole development community that thinks this is now the Wild Wild East. I just want to say tonight, we are not going to be either the Wild Wild West or the Wild Wild East, but we are going to very much be a community that will be here to talk about our future, about what is going on here, to converse with our elected officials. And that also brings me to explain something about the changes already in terms of the agenda you have. There's going to be some change in terms of the agenda. Right now, the elected officials that we had expected to be here with us, we assume are on their way. So we are still waiting at this point for Borough President Eric Adams, and for Senator Kevin Parker, and for Councilmember Eugene. But in the meantime, we have a true treat in that we're going to hear some words from Deputy Borough President Diana Reyna. If you know anything at all about Deputy Borough President Reyna, she was the former council member for the 34th Councilmanic District, Bushwick, Ridgewood, and if there is anyone who knows anything at all about the issue of mega development, affordable housing, gentrification, and all of these issues, it is most definitely Deputy Borough President Diana Reyna, and I'm going to just turn this over to her to say a few words to us tonight. Thank you.
So good evening to everyone. I know that we have people on the stairwell, and if I can ask people to just continue to inch in so that way people who are outside could just continue to come in. Wherever you have space, just move up so that we can have everyone inside the room, not outside. We want to make sure that we hear from everyone as much as we can. As this evening continues to convene, I want to just share with you, I left the borough president at Borough Hall. He was convening a meeting amongst the CEC, the Community Education Council, presidents of Brooklyn, and he needed to make sure that he was able to finish that meeting before he came here, so he should be on his way. I am his Deputy Borough President Diana Reyna, and I want to thank the Prospect Park East Network and its leadership for convening this important town hall. We met back about a month ago in Borough Hall, and they were very expressive of the sentiments of their community and making sure that they weren't going to stand idle. And as advocates, making sure that they were going to have a voice be heard in Borough Hall. Moving forward, there has been this agreement of making sure that we gave an opportunity to be able to have a town hall as a first, to be able to have healthy dialogue around what are some of the challenges, concerns, and how do we move forward one agenda on behalf of your community board, your community. And it's important because as Celeste, and I want to thank Celeste for being such a gracious moderator. It's not easy to be the moderator, but she's doing an excellent job, and I want to make sure you give her a round of applause, and the committee that put this together. Thank you, Celeste. And Elder Winston could not have been any more excited to see so many people in a house of worship, so I understand your excitement. We wish we could see Sunday Mass like this every Sunday, and we promise one way or another we'll come back. But making sure that we understand how important a house of worship is. I'll give you an example. I represented for 12 years Williamsburg, Bushwick, and Ridgewood, Queens. And my community of Williamsburg, where I grew up, I was born and raised in Williamsburg, live in Bushwick, and this particular community has had a rezoning and a downzoning. And so we've lived both worlds. And it's challenging, and you learn from every action that's taking place. Most of all, you learn from what has been a community rebuilt from the ashes, from the ground up. And we lived through what were the fiscal crisis and what was the equivalent of the Bronx was burning, so was Williamsburg and Bushwick. And we went from having 170,000 people in Bushwick to 70,000 people in Bushwick. And so when I tell you we want to see development, we also want to see responsible development. Responsible development is what I understand. You are here, and that requires what would be a give and take. And so I want to represent what is the wishes of our community and making sure that your wish list becomes a forum, a starting point. And there's going to be an opportunity for us to deal with what are changes to that list. And we have to start off educating and making certain that a community and its residents understand what are the tools available to them. And it's important that this network doesn't start and end at this town hall. Williamsburg went through its own rezonings, and I mentioned this in the sense where we were losing more people, more families, so much so to the point where we were losing students in our public school systems as well as our parochial schools. So much so to the point where we were losing our schools. And that starts triggering what is a sense of alarm. Where are people going to, and who is here? And if they're not a part of our community, whose community are they? And so you have to wonder who's your neighbor to your right and who's your neighbor to the left. And working together to understand where you want to be together 10 years from now. That's a very serious conversation to have. And it requires planning. And planning means you take a geographic, bounded by lines, block by block map of what is this precious community, PLG, the Wild Wild West. And you start factoring in, what do we want to see 10 years from now? Do we want to see home ownership? Do we want to see schools? Do we want to see better transportation? Do we want to see parks? You want a balanced community because you're not building for one person, you're building for the masses. And with that comes what is that balance to making sure that nothing is left behind. And it will require what is the add-ons and takeoff of this plan. I mentioned that because through it all, we have a waterfront that was once upon a time industrial in Williamsburg. We lost many jobs. The point was to making sure that we were going to see what would be opportunity for growth, as well as housing, as well as parks, as well as jobs. But a plan and a rezoning alone doesn't make that happen unless you see it through to the very end. And so I caution that when you want what would be responsible planning, it's not just on paper. That you see it through and you take into account inventory of your community. Do you have the organizations that will support a lot of these services? The work placement, the opportunity to have growing schools. Where there's empty schools, do we have the future birth rate in your community? Are we planning for our seniors? One of the greatest, fastest displaced population are our senior citizens. They are renting rooms from 2 and 3 bedroom apartments with other families just to sustain what is a fixed income of a Social Security or a disability check. To be able to remain in their community and live with dignity and company. And so we have to take into account population growth from the young and the old, respectfully. The other matter, as far as planning is concerned, is understanding the terminology, capitalizing on the opportunity to utilize your community board, for one, but also bringing in what is the city planning department. There is a 197A, which is a community planning tool, and a 197C. I'm not an urban planner, but I'm sure you have many urban planners in this community that can help host what would be a weekend of workshops to understand the difference and where it is that you need to be and which one applies to you quicker. I know at the very least that the 197C is fast-tracked and the 197A is slower in process. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone in the room. The issue is that it hasn't started in this community. I've done a little bit of digging. We have our own city planning urban planner in Borough Hall. His name is Richard Barrack. He will be accompanying the borough president tonight. And he will be here to answer questions, to help you to understand the difference. But that doesn't get to be understood in one evening. That is a work in progress. You have to form what would be this network, a separate committee that will deal with those specific task-oriented goals of making sure that you drive that agenda and what it is you want to see. And then you regroup. As you count around the room, there must be at least 400 people here. 400 voices should be heard. 400 testimonies should be part of the record. A child should participate as much as an adult, because a child will see something very different than an adult. They may want more parks, and you may not even think about that. And we want to be able to understand that what is calculated as far as the cost of what would be maintaining the character of your neighborhood versus having opportunities for affordable housing. Today we talk about affordable housing like it's fashionable. And we're trying to understand, well, what is, affordable? Is $2,000 rents subsidized affordable? Because the going rate of affordable housing today, depending what part of the neighborhood, can cost you $2,000, and that's with taxpayer dollars. And so we have to start restructuring, reassessing where we are and where we want to be 10 years from now. And that is what this forum allows us to hear. And so this is not about blaming any one particular project or another, nor blaming one individual or another, but this is about making sure that we understand what are your needs and how do we move forward so that we have a plan with outcomes. That is the commitment that Borough President Eric Adams is making to you. That is a commitment that Borough Hall is going to make with you. And it requires each and every one of you to put in your energy, your thoughts, and your open mind to taking into consideration your neighbor's needs, not just your own. And with that, I want to turn it over to Celeste, and I want to thank everyone for just listening to what would be my personal and professional experience in the years I've dedicated to my own community, and now serving you as a deputy for the full borough of Brooklyn, my home borough. Thank you.
Thank you. We feel fortunate with the new administration that is in Borough Hall. And I now want to bring forward Suki Chan. Okay. Suki is not going to really want to hear me go through all of this, but I have said this before. Suki has been in this community the spark that lit the prairie fire. This little woman right here she's got more energy and just vision and fire in her than you would ever expect. And she is the person who about a year ago, when she got word that a 23-story tower was contemplated for Flatbush Avenue, she got on the Lefferts listserv and said, what do you think about this? A year later, here we are packing this place out, getting the ear of our elected officials to talk about that and, in fact, a whole bunch of other things that are going on in our community. Suki will now do a presentation on behalf of the Park East Network, Prospect Park East Network, that will kind of lay out in a basic summary how it is that from that first email that she sent to the Lefferts listserv to today, what's been going on. Suki?
Okay, let's see. Who understand?
So I'd actually like to start by saying I'm not the first in this community to talk about these issues. In 2008, there was a planned 23-story tower at Lincoln Road. It was to be all luxury, and the community protested this tower. The builders ran into the recession. They weren't able to get funding to complete the tower. And a couple of years ago, a new responsible developer came along and bought the site. He presented to the community board. He worked with the community to find out what kind of design would be acceptable to them. And he is building a 9-story building on the same site. It's all private money, but it's 20% affordable housing because it's in that zone where you don't get a property tax break unless you do affordable housing. Unfortunately, this tower at 626, after the tower at Lincoln Road went up, was slated to go up, we asked city planning for a rezoning of that area to prevent future towers of that height, and we were told that at that time they didn't have the resources. So we knew this was going to happen again once the recession was over, and in fact it did. And it happened with 626 Flatbush, a 23-story tower that was set to be developed by the Hudson companies right on Flatbush Avenue, looming over Prospect Park. And there was no community input and no public hearings, despite the fact that there was to be $72 million in state loans and another, I think, $5 million in federal funding. A member of our community board spoke to the developer at that time and advised them that the community would oppose the height of the tower based on the previous opposition to such projects, and asked if they would come before the community board to discuss their plans. And they refused because they said they were doing this project as of right, which means that under the zoning law, they could build as high as they want. There were also no public hearings held by the state agency. And so one of the things that the Prospect Park East Network did was to bring a lawsuit to require the state agency to do environmental impact studies. These studies are meant to address issues like what the impact of such a building would be on a public resource like Prospect Park, which is a designated scenic landmark, what the impact would be on landmarked areas. As many of you know, Ocean Avenue has a landmarked area behind it, which is something that the community also fought for recently. The Lefferts Manor Historic District, right across from this building, is also a landmark district. And also, what would be the impact of this building on the socioeconomic environment in our community? Because 80% of the units were slated to be luxury apartments by the standards of our neighborhood. And what would that do to rents in the area? So this is what this building would look like. This picture comes off of the developer's website. This is the site where the building would be built. As you can see, the Tudor row houses on Chester Court are just behind it, and surrounding it is 6-story apartment buildings.
It's right outside my window. It's gonna block my view.
It was formerly a parking lot, so lots of you I know are feeling the parking squeeze. This is what our community looks like. For those of you who haven't had, don't live in the community, who haven't had the chance to walk around, this is what the blocks immediately around that site look like. We have 3-story row houses. We have 3-story mixed-use buildings with stores underneath. We've got 6-story apartment buildings. And another thing that we found out as we went through this process and started looking at zoning and, some of the planning issues that Deputy VP Reyna was talking about, is that our neighborhood is the densest in Brooklyn, and that's based on the 2010 census. If you look at the picture, the darkest areas are the densest areas, and you can see that little strip right by Prospect Park is the darkest. And as you continue on down south, it's also very dark. This is not something that I would have expected, but it turns out that Flatbush Avenue and Ocean Avenue have lots and lots of apartment buildings that are filled with rent-stabilized, affordable apartments, and we've also got all these cul-de-sacs, Westbury Court, Parkside Court, Beekman, that also have apartment buildings. So, what else have we found out about what's going on at 626 Flatbush? And I bring this up. I bring up 626 Flatbush as an example because it's the example that we know about that's happening in this zone along the park. But because of the zoning, which allows buildings of any height to be built, it has become a magnet for luxury development. As I mentioned before, 5 years ago, there was an attempt to do a similar building on a different site. And so this is something that if we don't address this zoning is going to continue to happen. So 626 Flatbush does have 20% affordable housing that's required for the property tax break along this stretch. The market rate apartments we discovered through a Freedom of Information request that are projected to be at these levels: $1,875 for a studio, $2,200 for a 1-bedroom, $2,800 for a 2-bedroom, and $3,500 for a 3-bedroom. Just to give you a comparison, we looked at a Brooklyn rental report for the real estate industry. This is taken from private market sources from bns.com. And the average market rate rental in PLG for a studio was $1,175, for a 1-bedroom $1,500, and for a 2-bedroom $2,254. So you can see that these market rates were designed from the get-go to be much, much higher than the market rates in PLG, which I'm sure many of you feel are already not affordable, but compared with what's coming, they look great. The median household income in Prospect Lefferts Gardens is $40,585. So that's something, a factor, as Deputy VP Reyna said, is something that we need to consider when we look at what kind of development we want coming to our neighborhood and what will meet the needs of our community. So why is all this happening in this neighborhood? Why are so many developers coming to build here and coming to build luxury housing? Well, if you look at this map, you can see that on the west side of the park, all of the zoning has letters after it, and that means it's contextual zoning. That means the height is limited. For example, in an R6B, you wouldn't be able to build taller than 50 feet. In an R7A, you wouldn't be able to build taller than 80 feet. On this side of the park, the east side of the park, and it continues on beyond just this stretch here, there are no letters after the numbers. And that means they can effectively build to any height they want. The zoning only regulates the density or the bulk of buildings. So in this stretch here, that's R71, you could literally build the Empire State Building because it's very tall and skinny. And so in this R7 district in particular, we've had particular problems because it's a relatively high density, the lots are big, and so that's how come we're getting these proposals for extremely out of context towers that don't fit into our low-rise community and that furthermore are priced way out of line with what existing market rates are. So what do we want to do to change this? What we've been asking city planning for since 2008 is contextual zoning. That limits building heights to be more consistent with the majority of existing buildings, which in our neighborhood would be 6-story apartment buildings along Ocean Avenue and Flatbush Avenue. And it doesn't reduce the amount of housing that can be built. So this is not something that needs to compete with affordable housing. As you can see, the way that zoning worked from the pictures, you can have a 10,000 square foot building that's wider, that covers the whole lot, or you can have a building that covers half the lot that's twice the height, or a building that's 4 times the height that covers just a quarter of the lot. And what's going on with the buildings at 626 Flatbush and also the original proposal for 33 Lincoln Road is that they're covering only a small percentage of the lot. There's actually a lot of open space around it, and that's how they're getting up to that height. They could build out wider and lower, but in previous meetings with the community, the developer has said that they don't want to do that because it's optimal for them to build higher because people will pay more for nice views over the park. So this is what we're looking at for rezoning. This is the stretch that's zoned R7, which we would like to be rezoned as quickly as possible because this request has been into city planning since 2008. We figure we should be at the head of the queue by now, even though we know you're very short-staffed and you've got a lot of priorities, but we've been waiting patiently for 5 years. And this is something that affects not just our neighborhood, but all the neighborhoods around the park. When you have massive development along this stretch, these buildings are very visible from within the park. As you can see, this is what it would look. This is a professional photo simulation of what this building would look like from the lake shore of the park, which can be seen from the west side of the park, from the south side of the park. Olmsted and Vox's vision for Prospect Park was that it be a rural retreat from the stresses of urban life, something that was free and open to the masses for all of us throughout Brooklyn who can't afford to have country houses. I can't tell you how many people in the park have told me that this was their country. And when that's taken away by tall buildings so that a few people at the top of this building can have little tiny postcard views of the park, that is gone forever from the public. These buildings are not going to be knocked down once they're up, and that's why it is so urgent that we address this problem before it is too late. This is the current view from the Nethermead. As you can see, Patio Gardens, which is our one existing 16-story building on Flatbush Avenue, is a little bit above the tree line. But a 23-story building, you can imagine, is 50% higher. It's going to be much more visible. What would a more responsible development look like? This is a simulation that we did looking down Fenimore Street of a 9-story building. So you can see it's more in keeping with what is there already. What are we asking for? We are asking for your help to get a temporary building moratorium for the 2 blocks next to Prospect Park that are currently zoned R71, where developers can build to any height, while the community and our elected representatives work with city planning to rezone the area to reflect something that the community wants. This would not affect construction that's underway that is contextual. So if a developer chooses to be responsible and to work with the community and to do what the community has already said that it wants, in 2008, our community board unanimously passed a resolution saying that this area should be contextually rezoned. Our city councilman has asked City Planning Commission since last summer to do the same thing. So if a developer chooses to flout the will of the community and our elected officials, then they should be subject to this moratorium so that the community can change the law. If not, they can go ahead and build. So one of the reasons for a moratorium is that when you start a rezoning process, which we have done at the community board level, developers get to know about this. And of course, they want to get their building in before the rezoning takes effect. So we're seeing developers buying up property right and left throughout Lefferts Gardens. The same developer that's doing 626 Flatbush has purchased another site on Clarkson and Nostrand. As I'm sure many of you are aware from the New York Times article that came out about Prospect Lefferts Gardens, there are many development sites throughout the neighborhood. The church elder, Winston, was talking about the gas stations that are shuttered. These are development sites as well. And so the purpose of having a moratorium is to allow the community time to have a say and time to implement what we want in a rezoning before it becomes a moot point. Otherwise, it takes 1 to 2 years to rezone. We rezone, but by that time the buildings have gone up. They're all saying it's done deal, it's as of right, and it's too late. So we want to hear from you, our neighbors, what your views are about this. And we want to hear from our elected representatives what they are going to do about irresponsible development in our neighborhood, because it keeps happening. We keep doing the right thing, going through the right process, and yet, everybody says, that train has left the station, it's too late to stop it. What can we do
Somebody pockets.
to make sure that our community has a voice? Thank you.
Okay, so we're again having a little bit of flexibility on our program, and can we get lights here? We are going to do a little flip of this. The most important aspect of the program is that the community gets to speak. And so in a minute, I'm going to turn this forum over to you, the people, to say what it is that you want to say. In the time that we've been here, Senator Kevin Parker, our representative of the 21st Senatorial District, will say a few words first. Hi.
Good evening. How's everybody? Okay. I'm glad you all came to this meeting of my close personal friends. Y'all not feeling like laughing, huh? I know this is very stressful. I hear you. Rents are too damn high. No, can I say that in a church? We're in the basement. We're not in the sanctuary. We're good. We're good. For those of you who don't know me, I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn, which is Flatbush and East Flatbush, Midwood, Ditmas Park, Windsor Terrace, and Park Slope. I'm the ranking member on the Energy and Telecommunications Committee and the ranking member in the Senate on the Committee on Alcoholism and Substance Abuse. I got approached by a number of the neighbors, and I'm guessing some of them are here, although I can't really see everybody who's in the room, about this issue a number of months ago. My sense, and they came to me about a very, very specific project, and we had a conversation about that project. Subsequent to that, I actually reached out to the New York City Department of Planning, the Buildings Department, and to Commissioner Darrell Towns, the Commissioner of the State Office of Housing and Community Renewal, and we're still actually waiting to get a full response. I did get a response from Commissioner Towns, but I'm waiting to get some other pieces responded to. My sense is that we're all here because people are concerned not just about rising rents, but some of these developments that are going up very, very quickly that are both impinging on people's air rights and views, and as well as like I said, all of that. Right. Now, to some degree, there's a couple of different issues that arise here. In the one, and because I know, so there's actually, let me break this up. There's a number of projects that are slated. I've had one conversation about one project. There are at least 3 to 4 other projects that I know are in the hopper, and they're going to be really pingent on this one project that most of us are aware of. So our ability to be successful around organizing around that project will probably, to some degree, dictate the fate of what happens in the other projects. Everybody with me? Yeah. All right. So there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that the developer is actually building as of right. Right? He's building as of right. And so what that means is that they don't need any other permission, outside of the regular building permits and those other things. They don't need anything else to go forward with their project. They're building what we call, again, as of right. Now,
They don't have to get nobody's permission?
not if you're building as of right, as long as they're following the zoning codes of the community. And my understanding is the one project that is the furthest along is building as of right. They're within code, and all they need to do is get the permissions of just the regular permits that you need to build anything, right? So you need building department and so on and so forth just to build what you want to build. Now that's. No, they do not. They do not. They do not. They're building. That's why I'm saying that's what building as of right is, right? Now, typically, when you talk about the community board process and the triple no process through land use, that is something that is coming in that is either different zoned or is something that is coming in that is a community service project where they're building on public land. One of the things that you saw during the end of the Bloomberg administration and actually the beginning of the Bloomberg administration and the end of the Giuliani administration is they started zoning facilities that people don't like in private facilities so they wouldn't have to go through land use, right? And so if you're just like many of you, if you own a building, right, you own a property and you want to sell your property, you can sell your property to whoever you want to sell with as long as it's a legal sale. And you can build on your property as long as you're within the borders, of the land and within the context of the zoning. And when you do that, that's referred to as building as of right. So that's the process that we're in as of now. Now let me speak. Let me. So I'm on your side. That's why I came. I'm on side. Yes. So the good news is I think that there's a number of different things that we can in fact do to in fact slow the process down and investigate the process. And I think that we're beginning to have those conversations about how that needs to go. I'm happy to see so many people here and a line outside of people who are waiting to get into the room because that shows that there's some real community support around it. And as I indicated to the group that came to see me, is that the biggest thing that this group needs to do is bring a lawsuit. Right? And I think that, all right, so I think that, I know some of that work has begun. And I think that the more people join it, the better, obviously, both from a resource perspective as well as the number of claimants who are, in fact, saying they've been harmed by this. So to the degree that you can do that, that will also help. Obviously, people should also raise this with both the mayor and the city council. We might want to reach out to the head of the, and I've actually begun this process of reaching out to the head of the land use committee in the city council and seeing if we can get a hearing on these particular developments and see what we can do to slow it down. So I don't really have any other information. I'm not sure if you want me to take a few questions. What do you want me to do? I'm doing what you want me to do.
Have a seat.
Okay. I'm here.
Okay. We thank you so much, Senator Parker. We are now going to move again to what we feel to be the most significant part of the program. We are moving to, excuse me, is there another town hall meeting going on?
All right, thanks.
My sister, there is one moderator. It's me. You don't get to do that. I understand that you are excited. A lot of people here are excited. And in fact, this is a perfect way for me to kind of talk about how this is going to work.
Okay.
All right?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry too, but
My apology.
I'm accepting your apology, and then we got that. Okay. Well, we have, in order to facilitate your voice in this process, there are 2 microphones. There is one there in the middle aisle, and there is another microphone there on the far side. I'm going to ask if you want to speak to this issue. Everyone is invited to come forward, to line up, to speak at the mic. There are a lot of you here. My sense of it is, as you hear your neighbors talk, you may be inspired to say something, which means that I am also going to ask that you Good evening, Senator Adams. You know, I love it. It is a delight to call you the Borough President Adams after so many years when you were our senator, right there on Flatbush Avenue. Senator Adams Borough President Adams knows a whole bunch of you. Would you actually, before, we were just about ready to open this up to the community, but if you would like to say a word or two at this point, you can.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, just do me a favor and look to the left, look to the right, look to the back. This is government, and this is what being part of a community is all about. You know, we got away from using the term neighbor. When you see folks and they say, well, he lives on my block. And so we need to get back to a conversation about a neighborhood when we are all in it together, and the concerns that cause us to mobilize is something that we believe in a very passionate fashion. I did not spend 22 years of my life protecting this community as a police officer to see it dissolve. And so when issues like this come about, and folks sat in my conference room, I said, you got to mobilize the community for me. I need the community to come out and display their concerns. Government doesn't operate from top down. It operates from the local level, from the bottom up. And so not only should we be concerned about a shadow over our park, we should be concerned about a shadow over our children. We should be concerned about a shadow of the lack of adequate food and the hospitals that are closing in our midst, and crime And so this coalition of people who are concerned about, is grass going to get enough sun? We must be concerned about, are the people of this community going to get enough resources? And Kevin and I and Dr. Eugene and so many others, we are able to do our job when the community mobilized like this. And so I applaud you, and I'm happy to walk into a room where different ethnicity and faces and cultural backgrounds and professions are coming together to mobilize over an issue. This is what government is about. This is what I've seen and witnessed throughout this entire city. So let's keep the fire on so we can have the community we want.
Okay, quickly. These are the rules. There are the two microphones. I'm going to ask you to line up, and we were thinking we were going to try to keep you to a time limit of no more than 2 minutes per speaker. Depending on how many of you want to speak, there may be a point that we're going to have to actually cut that number so that as many of you can speak as possible. I will ask when you come to the microphone, it would be really considerate and informative to the rest of us if you can say your name, say something about either where you live, if you're not a member of the PLG community, what it was that attracted you to come to the meeting, and then, of course, whatever your remarks are. We're definitely, again, because there's so many of you, we're going to ask you to be concise. Our time is limited. This is not the moment to get to the mic and thank the Academy and all of the people in your life who've made it so wonderful. Be considerate of others. Please be relevant also. We, know why we're here. We're not here to talk about the new parking lot in Prospect Park. We're not here to talk about the improvement of the Parkside Plaza. Thank you, Rudy Delson. But tonight, the issue really is about contextual zoning, affordable housing, out-of-control, irresponsible real estate development, building moratorium. That's what we're here for. And lastly, I just wanted to say that those were the ground rules. I wanted to remind you of the house rules. We are in a house of worship. Okay. You may not be a religious person, you may not have faith, but for the next hour or so, as you hear people speak, love your neighbor as you love yourself, all right? Have some respect. Even if people are getting up here and saying things that you don't agree with, it's the idea that you don't agree with. It's not the person. So don't critique the person, don't blame the person, challenge the idea. And let's let our elected officials, hello, Councilmember Eugene. Hi.
I thought that I was invisible.
You came in while I got you this mic. I just happened to turn around and see you. If you would like 30 seconds, a minute or so to speak before the community or after. And then start lining up people.
30 seconds in your watch.
Is it possible to turn on the air conditioner? Is it possible to turn on the air?
We'll
Let me be very brief because I got only 30 seconds. Let me commend you and congratulate you. Number one, all of you work very hard to make this wonderful event possible. And I want to commend and congratulate each one of you here because this is very, very, very important. Because I usually say that government cannot do too much. We have the resources, we have the right to do certain things. We can do this much, but when we work in together with the community, we can do that much. It is, thank you. It is our community. I'm here to show one more time my support and to work together with you and with my colleagues to make sure that we resolve this very important issue affecting the community. I'm all yours. God bless you.
Okay. First of all, to identify myself, my name's Kim Butler. I'm a lifer. Hi, Kim, and everybody. I'm a lifer here so I go back to 1960 from Midwood Street. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to those of you who have come and all of us who've been here today, because we're all of common spirit. So I think we have that as a ground start. And I wanted to thank those of you who put together all this information, because it is so vitally important for us to know about all the stuff that's going on behind our back. So I have 3 very short questions. The first one I wanted to ask is, given the experience of what happened with the Barclays Center, what do we need to keep in mind so that we don't have that happen to us? The second one I wanted to ask is, we've got other neighborhood associations that are part of this community and from across the park. So like Lefferts Manor is having its meeting next Saturday. Are we coordinating with all the different neighborhoods that are affected by this? And the third one is about process. I'm happy to see that there's a website about this, and I'm sure that's a good way for all of us to follow this. I wanted to ask, is that going to be complete information for us to follow this? And it's really important for us to know whatever is going to be the next step, so that we don't lose all this momentum that's here. So thank you so much.
I will say to you that the other sponsoring organizations of tonight's program are the Lefferts Manor Association, the Flatbush Tenants Coalition, and the Prospect Lefferts Gardens Neighborhood Association. So it's not just Prospect Park East Network. Also, yes, the website, we have been adding to it and updating it, and we're going to be adding much more information. That will be an excellent source for you to find out the latest of what's going on with the lawsuit. And by the way, the moderator, I shouldn't be in this role because I got a big mouth. The moderator is not supposed to say anything, but I must say at this point that there is an issue with respect to 626 that although the building is technically with respect to the Department of Buildings, it is as of right, the developer can come in and do whatever he wants to do. The particular issue here, however, is that the developer has gone for $76 million in public money to erect that building. And when you do that, you have to take into account the environmental impact on the community in which you are building. So it is as of right, but not of right to environmentally harass a community. That's what the lawsuit is about.
That's right.
Hi, hello? I'm a Brooklyn guy through and through. I mean, I live on Flatbush. I go to Brooklyn College. I work at BAM. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I've seen construction from downtown Brooklyn, and I mean, all the Forte building, there's a ton of, really high-rise buildings out there. And it's spreading, and I'm wondering, and it's happening here now, obviously. And I'm wondering, is there something that could be like proactively done? Why is it that it's always at 0 hour that everyone is angry and, trying to change things? I mean, it's probably going to happen here. I mean, then it's just going to move on, to another neighborhood. So I'm wondering, is there anything we can do to stop the hemorrhaging of culture in this borough? You know what I mean?
No. I think. Okay. Really?
It's on. Okay. Can I get a little bit more volume?
No, he's here.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the question. I think that, so part of it is that we have to, there's a change as people have been knowing in Brooklyn, and it started way before the arena, right? So when we allowed what they call it, the Queen of Brooklyn was that first skyscraper. As soon as we allowed the zoning to go higher than the Williamsburg Savings Bank building, some of those who lived in Brooklyn a long time, you don't remember, you're too young. But those who remember, you couldn't build anything in the borough. The two highest landmarks in the borough was the parachute jump in Coney Island and the Williamsburg Savings Bank building, right? And you couldn't build anything higher than that. When we began building up, the Brooklyn Bridge area, that Cobble Hill downtown area, that was kind of the beginning of the end, right? And so what we're seeing is the wave of development coming, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? And so we're not anti-development here. The question is, what does responsible development look like? What does sustainable development look like? How does the community that's indigenous to the areas still maintain, a way of life that suits them as we in fact do this? And so, I don't think people know things that, this is not 0 hour, right? 0 hour, we would be at a different place if it was really 0 hour, and there's lots of things that we can do. Now that we're here and we're organized, we now have an opportunity to look at all of the projects. We now have a new borough president who many of these projects have to go through, so he's here and he's representing and talking to us about these issues, right? And again, as I've indicated, I think that there's a couple of different paths that we have to go through. I think, again, the lawsuit is going to be really, really important. I heard somebody earlier ask about the notion of slowing down the permits. You can't slow down permits just to slow down permits. The developers are citizens, American citizens too. They have rights, and they have the right to develop, just like you have a right to your property and those kind of things. And there's due processes. And so there are processes by which we as community members can in fact challenge things, but you just can't slow things up just to slow those things up. And I think that we will work together to kind of figure out where the choke points are in the process and the right agencies to in fact do that. And again, one of the things I suggested is that we work with the members of the council to get a land use hearing on these projects and try to see if we can get some accommodation from the developers to not stop their development, but to do something that fits within the nature and the environment of the community and work within the contexts that the community wants to see something developed.
Let me just add something very quick. There are two solutions, short-term one and long-term one. The short-term one is what you are doing, mobilize and get together and do every effort that you can do to affect this project right now. But the long-term one is to do the rezoning. Because those builders, those developers, they are able to do that because the zoning allows them to do it. So we got to work on the rezoning. What I did, I already sent a letter to the commissioner. You know that, many of you here know that. To ask the commissioner to do a study and to consider the rezoning of this block. Not only this block, we are facing the same situation in many areas in Brooklyn. We have Community Board 17. I submitted a letter, I sent a letter also to the commissioner to start the process of rezoning for the Community Board 17. We have also Community Board 9, which is this one. And I don't know if you know the historic district, the Victorian Flatbush houses. When I was elected, I advocated with some of the leaders of this block. We were able to obtain the designation of historic district. That means we will be able to protect this area. So to make it short, what we have to do, and I already started the process, and my office has been in communication with the Land Use Protection Commission, and we have to try to see what we can do and to introduce legislation to do the rezoning of this area. If we rezone the area, they won't be able to do that anymore. And I guarantee you that's what I'm going to push for.
We're going to hold off of answering questions so y'all can speak. So we're going to hold off. So don't think we're being disrespectful, but we're going to write down the questions. So this way we'll allow you came here to speak, and so we're going to fall off on answering those questions and let you have an opportunity to speak.
Flatbush Avenue is known to many throughout Brooklyn as a place to come to get your hairs cut and styled. From talking to several barber shops and hair salons, we've already noticed that their lease options are being shortened to 5 years and maybe a 5-year extension. This worries us. If we start to lose the barbershops and the beauty salons that have shaped this neighborhood, We've cut the thread that has united this community for years. Don't get me wrong that we're not against change. We understand the ebb and flow of the neighborhood, but it just has to be done responsibly and respectful of our community.
Hi, my name is Nathaniel. I live on Beekman. I've been here about 2 years. I'd like to first commend everybody for being much more open to the idea of development can be okay and change can be okay than honestly I expected from a meeting like this. And I had a pretty specific suggestion about what we can do as a part of this rezoning process. You guys mentioned accurately earlier that this isn't really about height translating into number of apartments, it's about floor area ratio. So that lot at 626 that's being developed can have a certain multiple of its total land area as built up area. That's what determines how many apartments can actually be built and sold, which also in turn determines in a small way what we all pay for in rent. The more apartments that are available, the more supply there is, the lower the price will be, or the less the price will rise as people want to move into this neighborhood. So one thing we might think about if we are trying to negotiate a permanent rezoning, not just a temporary moratorium, is maybe a higher floor area ratio. That might be the kind of compromise that interested developers could go for in exchange for a lower height. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carl Blake, and as my wife just said, we moved into the neighborhood about 7 years ago, opened a business, and decided to invest in the neighborhood. My question is, since there are not a lot that we could do with the variables that are available to us, the historic neighborhood, the federal funding, what can the Borough President Office do to stop the building or at least reduce the height? Because at the end of the day, you know, Senator Adams, you've been a good guy. I've come to your office, we've chat a number of times. I'd hate to see this be the fingerprint left on your stay in the Borough President's office. So we're hoping that you'd use, you'd use whatever available, resources at your disposal to reduce the height of this building.
Evening, everyone. My name's sorry. Good evening. My name's Quest Fanning. Among other things, I'm a lifelong resident of this block. There's a difference. There's different ways to develop and not destroy. If you looked at Williamsburg a number of years back, it was a vestige of a place where there had been industry, and it was useful to bring in more people. Can you hear me? All right. It was useful to bring in more people at that point. But here we are in the most densely populated piece of the borough. I don't think we owe the borough anything. What? I don't think we owe the borough anything. I think that we deserve fairness. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the same treatment that Mayor de Blasio's neighborhood gets. I'm asking for the same treatment that every other side of the park gets. That's all we want. Nothing special, just fairness.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Natasha Werther, and I work for the Department of Education. And I actually work in the area of contracts. So we just got this initiative that we're going to push universal pre-K. That means 450 contracts in a matter of 6 weeks. We have been told that we can hire temps and do whatever it takes. So of course there's money, the state put money into that. And I, like the other lady, not pointing fingers, not being abrasive, I'm just saying, as someone, my parents have lived on this block for 47 years. I came back here to finish my PhD, so I took the rent stabilized apartment. I'm asking, what is it that we can do? And it does feel like 0 hour, because when you walk outside and you have to step over debris, or if things are being knocked down in front of you, and it has a very scary feeling. So that's kind of where we as a community is coming from, that we're fearful and we're just asking for help, not pointing fingers or anything of that nature.
My name is Cheryl Seeley. I live in Parkside Avenue. I own a home in Parkside Avenue. I have two daughters that I've raised in Parkside Avenue who are now also productive residents of this community. My concern is, those of us who have been here, we stayed here and no one else wanted to be here. Those of us who are here, those who are coming in, we have welcomed you. However, we have the right to have some kind of input in how our community is developed. We have a right to know what's going on. We have a right to know, we have a right for you to hear, for the developers to hear, we don't want it. You know, the issue is, it's total disrespect.
Yes, it is.
And it has to stop. All we want is for those to hear us as we hear them. Yeah. But President, you asked us, you wanted to hear the voices of the people. I'm a voice of many, many families within this community who have been here.
Yeah.
We need a moratorium now.
Good night, Mr. Adams, Kevin, Eugene. My name is Michael Dennis, and I'm the block president of Hawthorne Street Block Association. I'm also a part of the youth committee and Community Board 9. One of my concerns, other than the shortening of the building, is affordable housing. What is affordable housing? A lot of my friends that are here right now, they're living in their mother's apartment by default because they passed away and they're able to afford the apartment. A lot of them have roommates, and that's how they're able to pay rent. I would like to raise my daughter in this community that I was raised in, and I would like to be able to afford an apartment here. So one of my concerns is being able to afford an apartment here, and I also work for the social services as well. So I want to stay here and be able to pay rent, affordable rent.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Jean Noel. I live down the street. I've been here for about 4 years. I work up at the Brooklyn Museum. I am a contributor to this community because I want to, because I feel committed to it. I have contributed to block associations and things like that at different areas of Brooklyn that I've lived, but I feel particularly drawn to this particular neighborhood. And I'm very interested in the presentation that was given earlier in the evening, and I want to know one specific action that we all can take, because we're in a solution-oriented conversation right now with people that are committed to change. And I feel like it does feel like kind of the last hour. It feels like things are happening. We're trying to scramble together. And I know that if we're going to scramble together, we need to know one thing that we can do. That's what I would like to offer up to the community, because I know if we do one thing and we can put action towards it, then we might be able to help the rezoning issue, which seems like the biggest thing, is to be able to change that zone. And then the second thing is to figure out the $73 million, how that can be halted. So if we can know one thing to help those two directives, I believe that we'll be able to get a lot of movement. And especially if we use social media, we can incorporate lots of different ways that we're used to engaging and do that. So thank you very much for organizing this, and I'm happy to be here.
I just wanted to cut in here to say you're not the first person to have raised that tonight. If you look at the agenda, the last item on the agenda is next steps and close, and we're absolutely going to cover what it is that you can do if you want to get involved in this fight before you all leave here.
Thank you. Good evening. Someone asked where the lawyers were, and I'm one of them. I'm happy to be here. I work for South Brooklyn Legal Services. My name is Rachel Hannaford. And our legal services organization, in conjunction with Wilmer Hale, a very fancy and excellent law firm in downtown Manhattan, have filed a lawsuit against the developer and the State Housing Finance Agency under the environmental laws. And the outcome is pending. But I just wanted to say, just speak for 30 seconds about this issue of secondary displacement. Someone mentioned that if there's more, if rents rise, then perhaps more opportunities for rentals will be available. And as an attorney who's in housing court every day representing poor people who can't afford to stay in Brooklyn neighborhoods, I can tell you that when rents rise, people are evicted and people become homeless. And I see that every day, and that is
what could happen here if the market changes, which it may. Sorry, sorry to end on that note.
Right up to the mic. Right. My name is Jim Sawyer. I live on Midwood Street for the last 34 years. And there were a couple of things I didn't quite understand in the presentation tonight. The first of which was I don't understand how this project got state funding without community involvement. And the second one was I heard that that the community asked for a zoning change in 2008, and I'm wondering why there's been no progress at all.
My name is John Way. I've lived here in this community for 4 years. I'm a retired hospital social worker, interfaith. And anyway, I got involved with PPEN when I heard what they were doing. And there's one thing that I believe in, which is the people's rights to speak for themselves. And that means this community has a right to speak to bring this corporation into negotiations. Okay, that's what it matters. And if our elected people are going to help us do that by helping us get to that place, then they're going to be useful. If they're not, we're going to lose. So I just think we should have eye on the prize. We need to bring this company into negotiations, and there should be negotiations about height and affordability.
Hi, my name is Jay Marcus. I'm Director of Housing Development for Fifth Avenue Committee. We're a nonprofit dedicated to social justice here in this community. And I just wanted to say that I think we're very appreciative that the conversation tonight hasn't been against affordable housing, rather it's been for affordable housing. Very often when you hear the anti-development crises, very often it turns anti-affordable housing. So we're grateful and we hope that this community stands with us in fighting for affordable housing, and you keep making that a priority as part of your platform on this issue. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, 1 minute, sir. You are with Fifth Avenue Committee? Yes. Fifth Avenue Committee has been named by Hudson to be the community partner, is that correct?
No, they've approached us about potentially leasing the affordable units, and but that's they've approached us about potentially leasing the affordable units if when the project is developed, but they just literally called us recently and we just started discussions, and we want to support affordable housing, but we want to do it in the context of community.
I would hope so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andre. I live on Lincoln Road and have done so in some form or another since 1989. There are three things that I'm interested in. One is what attracted me to Brooklyn. I grew up in the Bronx and lived in Manhattan. I got here in the 70s, actually, is the sky. It's oppressive in Manhattan because buildings go up so high, you feel like a caged animal. And in Brooklyn, because it's flat, 3- and 6-story buildings mean the sky is dynamic and a part of the life that we live here. That's one. Two is, I don't like the idea of the development. It's unbridled capitalism. It's going on across the world. But more importantly, it decimates communities because the people who will live in these luxury apartments, who can afford to do so, won't actually live here. There was a thing on NPR the other day about Bishop's Road in London, about, $1 million buildings, mansions, all boarded up, a third of them. Nobody's living there. These are cash cows. And the last thing is safety. You know, Barclays Center and the skyscrapers are supposed to be...
Brother, respect the time. The sister's telling you the time is up. Respect her.
Hi, good evening. My name is Redeneva Andrews. I'm a mother of five, and I love Prospect Park. Okay, already the building that they destroyed in Flatbush Avenue, that was my doctor's office. So it's completely gone. It's relocated. Okay, so it started affecting me as a person in the community and plus a lot of other people in the community. Prospect Park is the home away from home. I'm from Jamaica, West Indies. Okay, a lot of trees that, you know, we have outdoors. I take my kids in the park and it's like I'm in Jamaica. Okay, I don't have to buy a ticket, I'm in Jamaica. Okay? So I really don't like the idea of the building. I really don't. And two, not everybody gonna be able to afford a luxury apartment. I don't make a lot of money. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Okay? So I'm glad that we're all here. Thank you all for organizing this. I'm from Flatbush Coalition. Anybody who's interested in Flatbush Coalition can educate you more about housing. And I'm glad we're all working together, and that's the aim. All of us working together. Thank you all, Mr. Ed.
Oh, hey, I'm Tim Thomas. I wrote a blog called The Queue at Parkside, and I've been actively following this for some time. I want to thank Senator Adams. You've always been very responsive. President, just President. Let's just call you President, because that's where you're going, my friend. You've always been very responsive and a friend to the community. I don't know you as well, Senator Parker, and Councilman Eugene. I'm glad you're here. I just want to say that when we sat around in ULERT meetings at the community board, somebody said, what can be done? And I said, well, hey, the mayor, he's the man in this town. Our city constitution basically gives him a heck of a lot of power. So what I said at that time was, we need a moratorium. Somebody said, you can't have a moratorium. It's as of right. I think that's a lot of bull. I've read history about this town, and when the mayor wants something, I'm going to point fingers at the guy who's not here, right? That's easy to do. If the mayor wants to do something in this town, the mayor can do it. That's why the next step, and what I'm asking the three of you tonight, to make a commitment to make it an urgent matter before the mayor. Because if we don't get the mayor on our side, I don't think we can do much. We'll sit around in hearings, we'll have more town halls, and in the meantime, the buildings get built. So I want you to take it to City Hall, take it to the governor if you have to. That's what I think we need to do. Get the big boys on our side.
That's a really tough act to follow. I'm Kim on Maple Street. I'm pretty new in this community, which I'm a little bit sad about because I wish I was here before, but I'm here because several years ago I walked out of the park and I walked down the street and people said hi. They said hello, they said how are you? And I moved here. I said, I want to be here and I want to ask people, how are you doing? And I want to get answers. I want to say hi. And I don't see this anywhere else in Brooklyn, and it's valuable and we've got to keep it. And another thing I love is that everyone's here tonight. It's rare and it's wonderful. So one thing that hasn't come up, and I'm wondering why I haven't heard it, there's an article in the Times recently about tax breaks for long-term homeowners. And it mentioned Philadelphia specifically as doing this. It mentioned Boston, it mentioned DC, and New York was nowhere. But that's one thing that's forcing long-term homeowners out of their homes. Why are we not doing this? That's a way to keep people here. Rental is a different issue, and that's a conversation that should be happening. But this is one way we can do it, and I want to hear that on the table.
My name is Gretel Weston, and I'm here to say I'm a senior citizen, and I was residing in an apartment, rent-stabilized building for the past 38 years. And my landlord get me out under false accusations. And I went to everybody and nobody do nothing for me up to this day. And I have a child that has a disability, and up to now I'm still stranded. What he did it for, to subdivide the apartments, and that's what he did to my apartment, subdivide it with other apartments.
Nancy Hoke, and I work with Prospect Park East Network. And I want to follow up on this question of Bill de Blasio and the way that he's framing affordable housing. He's talking about if you have high buildings, you can have, it's okay as long as you have affordable housing. But one of the problems with that, and what we're seeing in this neighborhood, and we just heard about it, is that as you build a luxury apartment like this, or with enough luxury apartments, you get what's called secondary displacement. And what that is, and we're already seeing it in our neighborhood, is the rents all around in the affordable apartments start rising, because now those landlords are seeing an opportunity. So even if you're living in and you know this, even if you're living in a stabilized apartment right now, there's a lot of harassment going on in the apartments around here, right? People are getting harassed, getting kicked out. There's a lot of racial steering going on, and we've heard all about this right on this street, where African American people are not being allowed to rent apartments. So what we're, and it's all because of this pressure that's going on, that we're going to have some luxury apartments. So we've got to be thinking about that, and this is one reason we really want a building moratorium on those high. There's a direct correlation between high buildings and this problem of rents rising in other buildings that aren't so high.
Excuse me, before you speak, I just want to say that we are really coming to the end of this portion of the program, so the gentleman that's right, you will be the last person.
Yeah, hi.
Okay, so
my name is
3 people.
My name is Leah Margulies, and I live on Chester Court, and this development is going up literally in my backyard. And, I've been in this community 8 years, and I feel like the person who spoke right before, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here, because it's a very neighborly place, and it's very mixed racially, culturally, economically, and I've never had that experience in New York, and I'm a native New Yorker, so I really want to protect this community. This building is being built literally in my backyard, and I personally would welcome a much lower building, even if it has to be spread out throughout the site and be closer to my own property. But I want something that's within the context of this neighborhood and that has more affordable apartments and more. I've looked at the plans for this building, and most of the so-called affordable apartments are studios and 1-bedrooms. There's like so few apartments designated for families. And this is a neighborhood where we want to protect our families.
Hi, my name is Aga Trojanak. I'm the coordinator for the Flatbush Tenant Coalition. And you've heard from some of our members already about their experiences, the effect that this type of development has, and it will be amplified the more that this happens. I just wanted to stress 2 things, some of which people have already mentioned, but I'll just reiterate. The effect that these types of developments have on rent-stabilized housing in particular, sometimes people think that rent-stabilized housing is just protected, people's rents don't go up, but that's actually not true. A lot of you here know that, right? So there are a lot of ways that landlords can drive rents up, and the more incentive that they see in the neighborhood, the more they will do it. And that includes a lot of harassment of tenants, a lot of harassment of long-term tenants, and that is something that we fight against every single day. Our members fight against that. The other point that I just wanted to make is, as we talk about affordable housing, I think we really have to keep in mind, like, affordable for whom? Because affordability is based on what's called the area median income. The area median income for the New York City metropolitan area, which is what's used for these developments, is for a household of that makes $84,000 a year, okay? So there are many, many families that live in poverty in our neighborhoods. 1 out of every 5 families lives in poverty, and those apartments are not going to be anywhere near affordable for those families. So we have to protect rent-stabilized housing, and we have to make sure that the affordable apartments are genuinely affordable.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Nicholas Almono for 139 Winthrop Street. I've been around this area for the last 5 years. I like the neighborhood. I like for that neighborhood to keep its character. More than ever, we have to think about the seniors in the neighborhood. It's okay for that building to be built, but we have to not only make sure it's going to be affordable housing, we have to figure out can we keep the seniors within that neighborhood, because we need a balanced neighborhood the way everybody is. Thank you.
Okay, we have come to the end of our open town hall meeting, and I now want to give the mic back to Borough President Adams and Senator Parker and Eugene. You may want to say a few things in response to the community. After that, we will, in fact, do some thank yous and cover next steps. If you want to be involved in this fight, just hold here a few minutes longer to find out how you can get involved. But first.
Can next steps be first?
Sure. Okay, so first of all, if you want to stay connected, you should have on the materials that were passed out here. You will have information that leads you to the Prospect Park East Network website. We have our email addresses. We have our Facebook page. That would be the first thing. The first level of interest of staying connected with this fight is to figure out how to stay with us online. Let your voice be heard. If you didn't get a chance to talk tonight, by all means, write letters to our elected officials. Write letters to Borough President Adams, to Senator Parker, and to Councilmember Eugene. It would be nice if you do a CC to the Prospect Park East Network, but this is not the only way in which your voice can be heard. Also, talk to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors on your block. Talk to your block associations. Talk to the people in the stores that you patronize. Talk to everybody about this issue, because believe it or not, there are still large numbers of people in our community who do not understand what is going on. You do. And it is up to you to help spread the information.
Can you give us the name of the people in charge of the zoning decision? Who are holding up the zoning?
Well, we're going to have to go to the Department of City Planning. As I understand it, are there members of the Department of City Planning that are in this meeting tonight? Yes, okay.
Yeah, where?
We're going to need this person to help us work on getting contextual zoning, so let's not take them out. I just want to say that we previously, a couple of weeks ago, there was a community forum that Community Board number 9 hosted at the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. The Department of City Planning was there. We talked about the entire zoning issues of the district. Tonight we're specifically talking about the issues in this area, PLG. But eventually, this whole issue of how to protect the neighborhood is going to go to the Department of City Planning. Just getting back to what you can do.
Moratorium.
Okay, I was going to get to that, but absolutely, that is the call. We want a moratorium. The way that we're going to get that, obviously, is to, implore our elected officials to take the lead in this, to be the, the spearhead that gets our mayor, our now progressive mayor, to not only look at the issue of affordable housing, but to also look at the issue of preserving neighborhood character. I mean, the two things are intertwined. We're not interested in affordable housing with 80-story apartment buildings. There is a way that this can be done more responsibly, better than this so-called 80-20 formula. But we need to have a moratorium so that the community gets the time to really sit down and figure out what it is that we want to see, and that the Department of Planning can come up with a reasonable plan. That's why we need the moratorium. There are some of you who will be content with going to the website, looking on the Facebook page, coming to these meetings, but there will be others of you who want to be more involved. We asked you to, sign the list. If you are truly interested, somebody from Prospect Park East Network will be getting in touch with you in the next week or 2 weeks or so, and we will be sending you a letter explaining the ways in which you can get more involved with the Prospect Park East Network. We have committees. We have a committee that put this event together. We have committees that are working on demonstrations. We have committees that meet with our elected officials. We have committees that are working with the media. All kinds of community outreach. We could definitely use your help. Make sure you sign the list, and if you want, go back to the list, put an asterisk. We'll know in particular you're someone interested in doing more.
That was very good.
A couple of things, and I don't know if time permits. I have with me Richie Barrett from my office, who is the housing guru. You know, many of you have met with him, and he understands really the intricacies of dealing with housing. And I think there's two ways we can do it, because I know we have to wrap up here at 9:15. I'm open to reconvene a meeting at Borough Hall where he can go through the actual real options that we have on dealing with this project. So we could do that, because I don't think 9:15, a couple of minutes is going to allow us really to get to the meat and potatoes that you need to know. But I do want to say this, the affordable housing issue, it's just not this fad. It's not this thing that people are just throwing out there. We have a housing problem in the city, and Brooklyn is at the heart of that housing problem. And we have to find senior housing, and we have to find housing for families and affordable housing. And at the top list of my agenda as the borough president, I have to get the borough back to employment. I have double-digit unemployment. 25% of 2.6 million people are in poverty, and 50% of them are one paycheck away. And so, as I have room full of people that talk about a building like this, I also receive a countless number of emails of people asking, how can we build more to accommodate for housing? So our goal is to use contextual zoning to make sure what we build to deal with the issue of housing and the issues of jobs, that we make sure that it doesn't destroy neighborhoods. But and we need to be very clear on this. The mayor has put out an aggressive agenda of building 200,000 units of affordable housing. And we don't have a lot of land space. All we have now is really airspace. And that's a reality. And any elected that comes before you and state that their top precedent is to determine if we're going to have a higher place to give affordable housing or leave people homeless, that's not a reality. Children are living in shelters in this city. The largest number of children living in shelters in history are now living in shelters. I can't go before those families and state I'm not going to aggressively push for affordable housing. That's at the top of my agenda, finding affordable housing. And if I can do that without having skyscrapers all over our community, I'm going to push hard as hell to accomplish that. But at the top list of my agenda is finding homes for people and putting people back to gainful employment. I don't sleep well at night that I go home to a warm house every night, and other Brooklynites don't do that. That's a reality for me. So Richard is here. There's a couple of questions that was asked. The $72 million It's not a gift. It's a bond loan that was given to this developer. Richard just instructed me on a low interest bond that he was given, and we need to examine. It was given through HBD. Dow Towns is in charge. I'm sorry. State Housing Finance Agency that Richard just shared with me, and so. That is dealing with the governor's office. Kevin, even when I was in the Senate, I wish we could pull back some of the money that we saw developers receive, but that's not the reality. So what I need to do, I borrow from the Sims model. An educated consumer is our best customer. So I need for Richard to spend a day.
Buffalo, Detroit.
Okay, wait, no, hold on, sir. Sir, we're not gonna yell. We're not gonna yell out at each other. You know, we sat here patiently and heard the community, and we want you to do the same for us, so we can get to a resolution. The apartment. Someone asked about the apartments in the building. Is 100% rental, and it's an 80-20 model, meaning 80%. Market, 20% affordable housing. And I believe that part of the reason that this developer is trying to build high is because he feels he gets more high. We're going to approach him and come with a reasonable solution to see if we can build flat and accomplish the goal that he's attempted to accomplish, to have the units of housing there. What I am happy to hear from many of you that came to the mic, you are not saying don't develop. You are not saying let's not have affordable housing. You're merely stating let's keep and maintain the integrity of our neighborhood. And that's a good conversation to have. And we're willing, and that's a conversation that I can push extremely in a extreme comfortable manner. And we will reach out to the developer, and we will engage the city, the mayor's office, to see what we can do to try to get this project to stay contextually with the community that we're in. So, Richard, we will let the organizers know a day when you can come, and Richard can give you a full rundown. We'll do it next week because we know we're on the clock, but we can give you a full rundown so you can fight this and with information and facts that are in hand. Lastly, someone raised an issue about housing. Jesse Hamilton is here. Jesse is now at the Senate office. If there's some issues with housing that people are having, Jesse's an attorney also, has spent a lot of time in housing court. Reach out to him, and whatever we can do. He's over at my old Senate office on the corner of Bedford and Montgomery. Yeah, right. The rent was too high on Flatbush. They threw me out. You know, so right. So that's what we're going to move from here. We want to respect the church. The church asked us to wrap up by 9:15, so we want to respect that. And I'm sure my colleagues want to have ending comments, but we want to wrap up with the time of the church asked for.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I'm going to be really, really brief. There's actually a couple of things that I wanted to, and I think Borough President Eric Adams really addressed most of the issues that people raised. Someone raised the issue about money without community involvement. The reality is that when you in fact are working with a state with 20 million people in it, that every single action government takes, it can't poll, right? And so you have you elect legislators, myself, members of the assembly, right? We vote on things, we create programs, and then those programs are administered by the governor's office. In this particular case, the Department of Housing Finance, which is the CEO is Commissioner Darrell Towns. All right, so those programs are administered in that way. We as legislators approve the programs. Again, you guys remember this from civics class, right? The legislature makes the laws. We oversee the agencies, but the agencies and the governor actually administer the law, right? And so once these programs are made, they do it. Every single project, every single thing that comes in is unfortunately not going to go, especially on a private deal. When you talk about a private developer with a private building, there's frankly, in some ways, no reason for there to be a public process because the public, although you're doing a public loan, it's not a process. If you did it, we would all be doing nothing but having meetings literally every day about every single project, and that's just is not going to be what happens. A young lady raised the issue about tax breaks for long-term homeowners. We do have some programs. Anybody here who owns their house gets STAR, right? All right. So we do have a number of programs for tax homeowners. You have to be very careful with comparing New York with the rest of the country. It's not fair because the dynamics are very, very different. Philadelphia there's more people sitting in this auditorium right now than live in Philadelphia. So, with all due respect, and I'm with the Penn State. But also, it's not a landlocked situation. Part of our problem in New York is that we're archipelago. Remember that from 4th grade, right? And so we're a group of islands, and so the space that we have to build on is limited, right? And people want to be here. And so it's a very, very different. So the set of programs that we have and what we incentivize is very different than what you see in other states. And so I'm happy. My office is at 1300 Flatbush Avenue, Flatbush and Foster. So if people want to come by and see me, my number is 718-629-6401. Again, that's 718-629-6401. Again, you know my name. I'm on the internet. Don't act like if you don't write it down now, you can't find me, right? So a number of people have come to me already, and we've actually started working together. So I'm looking to continue that process and being along with the people in this room every single step of the way. So thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very, very brief. Give me 1 minute, please. As I said previously, one of the ways to prevent such situation is by rezoning. If you don't do the rezoning, you are going to face the same situation every time. And I told you I started the process already, and I'm going to continue it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to meet with you, and I'm going to send an invitation for you to meet with me, to strategize, to push for the rezoning. And somebody also mentioned negotiation. I have an idea, and I want to sit down together with you, and I'm going to reach out to the landlord or the developers to see how we can not stop the project, but force him to modify the project in order to respect the fabric, the contexture of the community. So I'm going to call you, we're going to meet together, and I'm going back to the city council and speak to the land use chairman and see what can we do as a city to make sure that we protect the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. First of all, we want to thank again our John Huss Moravian Church, which gave us the space to have the meeting, to our elected officials, Borough President Adams, Senator Parker, and Eugene. Most of all, thank you, PLG, for coming out. In the time that I have lived here, this is the issue that has brought out more people, more galvanized for action than I have ever seen. Let's keep the fight going. Fight the tower. We need a moratorium now.